This is Brent Hoskins, Executive Director of the Business Technology Association. In the fall of 2015, I had the opportunity to visit the Thomas A. Russo Museum of Business History and Technology, located in Wilmington, Delaware. I was there with several representatives of BTA, along with our friends from Mars International and Ross International. It had been many years since I had seen Tom Russo. In 1985-86, he had served as president of the National Office Machine Dealers Association, commonly referred to as NAMDA. What was then NAMDA is now BTA. Tom had been very instrumental in the development of an office equipment museum that was once located in the building where BTA is headquartered in Kansas City, Missouri. So I was not at all surprised to hear that he had established his own museum in the building that once housed his office technology dealership, Delaware Business Equipment. The day of our visit, I had my camera with me, and it quickly became clear that a video recording of portions of the tour Tom gave of his museum would be of interest to many. What follows are excerpts of what I captured on camera that day. I know you will enjoy hearing Tom talk about some of the archives in his collection, as well as his comments in the brief interview at the end of this video.
First attempt to mechanize writing was done by a doll like this in 1750. A man by the name of Edmund Droz, D-R-O-Z, developed a machine that would write out 105 words. Okay, but the interesting thing was that in the back of the doll, it was, the mechanics were all in it, and it was programmable so he could change the words to anything he wanted. And that was the first attempt to mechanize a doll. This example doesn't write. The arm moves, the body goes back and forth, there's some music, and the hand that operates the adding machine goes up and down, and it's called the Mechanical Accountant. And it was made in around 1890. And in 1780, he patented a copier, and this is one of the very first machines that he patented, and it was a rolling press type copier. And what you did is you took an aniline ink and you dipped your fountain pen, wrote your letter, and then you, within 24 hours, you put that on a sheet of paper, moistened it, ran it through the rolling press, and pulled it apart, and you had a copy, except it was backwards.
Do it again.
So, but still, Washington, Jefferson, Franklin all have these. And that and the screw press was also invented at the same time on the same patent. And then, of course, the rolling press was developed where you had continuous paper. And this one is dated about 1886. And I remember them bringing this machine in, setting it right in the middle of these 100 guys, and we were just thrilled to death. It was plain paper. We could copy proposals, books, everything, you know. 1959.
Wow.
And of course, the 914 is everybody's heard of, but this little jewel weighs 628 pounds.
Yeah.
Put your paper down, and the copies came out, or a number of copies, and it was terrific for the time.
And you couldn't buy it then, right?
No, you could not buy them. Xerox worked out a lease plan. I have a copy of one of their buildings in 1970 that was donated, a bunch of buildings in our library, and averaging a lease plan where you paid so much a month for so many copies for a year. And but after they were back and they were through with the machine, my understanding is Xerox destroyed these because they didn't want to compete with the used machine market.
Yeah.
And so that's a milestone. A man by the name of Charles Thurber invented the second American typewriter. It was called the Thurber typewriter. And it was a famous invention because the platen, it was the first time they used a platen, and the platen moved horizontally when you typed on the plunger. So there were things in that were used later. This is the second typewriter to come out. It was a Caligraph, and in order to get around the all capital letters, they had two keyboards, one for capital letters, one for small letters. Well, the problem with that is that for touch typing, it really wasn't that, good. But they were very famous because they were cheap, and they sold a lot of machines. This is the Caligraph number 1. This is the machine that made the typewriter industry take off, and it's the number 2 Remington. This was the first machine that had a shift key. Mm-hmm. And if you notice, the platen moves back and forth. And two inventors with Remington were involved in inventing the shift mechanism. One of them put 2 characters on the same lug, and the other one, the actual mechanism that moved the carriage back and forth. They sold over 100,000 of these machines. And of the first model, they probably sold 5,000 because it was all capital letters, had a lot of limitations, and this didn't have, and it was smaller. This is another Japanese machine, and it was called the Nippon, and this was the first one, this is the second one. An inventor by the name of Sugimoto invented this, and he invented something like 1,000 inventions. He was Japan's Edison. This is an arithmometer. You're going to hear a little bit more about arithmometers as we go along, but arithmometer was basically a 4-function calculator, and it was the first semi-automatic 4-function calculator. And this is the one of 5 machines known to exist where they combined a printer with the arithmometer. I have the largest collection of arithmometers in the world. We probably have 30 of them, maybe 32. A kid by the name of Dorr E. Felt. And before him, there were adding machines, and every time you hit a key, you cranked it in. Hit a key, you cranked it in. He got this idea that why not make the key alive so that when you depressed it, it would automatically print the character. So he went to the butcher shop. The kid didn't have any money, didn't know any better. Went to a butcher shop and got a macaroni box, got some skewers, some rubber bands, some staples, and he had a pair of pliers and a jackknife and a screwdriver, and he put together a macaroni box. That's it right there, being presented to the Smithsonian. But this man built this, and unlike a lot of inventors, he stayed with the project, developed a company. He became the largest calculator company in the world, and he developed what is known as the Comptometer. Now, you guys are too young to remember, but I remember walking into the Department of Commodity Stabilization, and there were 100 operators spread out going like this with their fingers. I mean, and they had the pencil here, that's how they worked. And they had 2 fingers that hit the keys, and they could hit as many as 3 keys at the same time. And all they did was enter these figures. This is the first one, and it had a wooden frame, and that's serial number 408, and these are all the models of the Comptometer company before they sold out to Victor years later. This is the first cash register, and it's a faithful copy made by NCR. And because I don't think there are any originals unless The Smithsonian has one. But that's what the cash register looked like. It did not have a drawer at the time. This cryptographic machines, this is the Enigma K model. It's the model that came after the World War II model.
Oh my gosh.
You remember? And it's exactly like the Enigma in World War II.
Yeah.
And this is the cryptographic machine that the American soldiers carried around in the, I think they called them the telegraph department or something, but this was the M209, and I have the copy, a model of that in the instruction book and carrying case and so forth. I'm proud of this. A man in Kansas City who was the CEO of Sprint had this machine on display in the lobby of the Sprint building, a huge complex in Kansas City. And when a guy by the name of Bell invented the telephone, they rushed him into exhibiting it at the Philadelphia Centennial. Well, this was the machine when remember when he spilled acid on his pants and he said, "Watkins, come here," and Watkins heard him on the telephone. And Watkins ran in, and "What's the matter, what's the matter?" And he said, "I spilled acid on my pants." He said, "I heard you on the phone." Bill said, "What? You heard me on the phone?" And they realized they had finally solved the riddle as to how to transmit voice over airwaves. And so he made 7 of these to take to the Centennial. On the bottom of this it says Dr. Alexander Graham Bell and the date of the patent, March 7th. And we think this is one of the 7. And I was standing aboard the flight deck of the USS Midway, and I said, "You've never had a full-time job in your life, and you've got a wife and a son at home. What the heck are you going to do to make a living?" And I couldn't figure it out, but I remember distinctly the wind was blowing, and I said, "We've got to figure something out." And when we got home, the first thing I did was start looking in the newspaper, and that was when all the Korean vets were coming home. The war had ended, and Mary Jo saw an ad for Remington Rand in the paper, and she said, "Here's one. Why don't you try them?" I said, "Okay." And I interviewed with IBM, Remington Rand, and a couple other companies that day. And when I went in there, 52 guys had interviewed for the job because all the vets, from the Korean War were. And they hired 2, and I was one of them. And I started a career with Remington Rand. For 17 years I was with them, and that's how I got interested in the industry. When Bill and I worked on the museum in Kansas City, it really got me involved in the history of the industry and so forth. And I was thrilled I found a lot of the equipment and desks and everything for the museum and shipped them by truck into Kansas City. And I just got so interested, started reading everything I could get my hands on. And then when NAMDA decided that they needed that space and got rid of the museum, I thought, well, maybe, and I always felt like there needed to be some place where you could go and actually see these machines on display. And I went to the Milwaukee Museum. They have a typewriter collection. It's down in the vaults. You can't see anything, really. And I went down and saw those. I went to the Smithsonian. They took me down to the vaults, and that was a shame. They have these beautiful products, wonderful products, stacked on top of each other. And I mean, it was just terrible. And they have the same problem, of course, space. And but I said I'd like to develop something where people could come in and they could see all of this and hear these wonderful stories about the inventors, and they were the technology of that era. I mean, they were the Steve Jobs and Wozniaks, and you know, they were that crowd. So. And some of them became millionaires just like they do today. They were, because if you were a good mechanician, and they called them mechanicans, in those days you could make a lot of money, especially if you had some inventions. I wish you could have been here when we had the students come in from this 5th grade class. I don't know whether you could see this or not, but this is the busload of them coming in. I went home and I told Mary Jo, I said, you know, this is what it's all about. This is, I mean, now we know that what we spent all this time on is valuable and worthwhile for these young people. And innovation and science and history is something that when you look at a product and you hear the story of that inventor, I mean, you place it in a historical chronology, and it helps you learn history and things like that. So that's when I think when we did that, that was a turning point, and I realized that we're on the right track. Well, I have to admit that a lot of this is about legacy. I do want the children to remember us. And I think they do. They've seen some articles in the newspaper. The News Journal had an article, and this article that I showed you was syndicated. It went all over the country, and I got calls from California, from the state of Washington, from New Hampshire, and people called and they said, "I saw the article in the museum. Would you be interested in old Underwood?" And of course, Underwood's a very common machine, and I'd say, well, I really appreciate your calling, but we have a space problem and we don't take duplicates, and so we turned down a lot of people. But we did. We also got a couple really good machines that, as part of that. But I want my legacy to be that here's something my first job in 1954, and I stayed in the industry all my life. And I loved it. It supported the children, sent them to school. It was good to me, and this is something nice to pass on.
Well, for that we all thank you. That's for sure.
Well, thank you.
You know, we're all passing through, right? You know, this time of our lives. You know, this part of history, I guess. And so you're leaving something behind. Not everybody does that. So.
I have to tell you that NAMDA was a big part of. Before NAMDA, I really didn't realize how big the industry was, and NAMDA and BTA played a big part in expanding my horizons, I think. So I'll always remember that.